Do you want to feel happier? Do you want to feel more radiant and more alive? To go beyond alive and to feel truly like you are thriving? That's what I'm here for. Helping you find that best you that you know is in there. It is. And you can start accessing that you today. It's possible. If you're ready for a shortcut to just that, let's work together. Reach out and let's work one-on-one to transform you and your life into happy, into thriving. Reach out to me and book a quick call. It's in the show notes, and let's get you there. Are you really committed and ready? Let's do it. I'm the happiest I've ever been thanks to all the practices I've made a part of my life. You can be too. It's here for you. You can also access my course, The Youthfulness Hack, which is all about feeling good and getting radiant and all the things I do concentrated in one spot. Go there today and use code AMY15 for 15% off right now, only for listeners of this show. And if you are ready to truly have accountability and live happy, book a call with me today. The world needs your best. Commit and show up. Let's do this. Hello, and welcome to the Amy Edwards Show. I'm your host, Amy Edwards. I'm so excited that you're here because every time that you show up for one of these shows, you're doing something for yourself to get a little bit better every single day. And that's the idea, to just keep building, of which there is no limit. So I'm so excited to get to our guest today, Leslie Kinney. First, though, let me remind you that my new courses are out and you can get a discount just exclusively for podcast listeners with the code AMY15 to the Youthfulness Hack. But if you're not ready to commit to that yet, you want to test the waters, then definitely check out my Ageless Mindset free course. It comes with a free meditation that is not really a meditation. It's actually mindfulness, I would call it. And you can do it literally anywhere in your car. It's repeating affirmations and I'm so proud of it. I love it. It's about 8 minutes long and I have found so much value in it. It's one of my favorites that I've ever made. So anyway, that's all free for you. And if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, then please do that too at amyedwards.com. All right, business is done. Let's move into today's guest. I'm so excited to welcome Leslie Kinney. Leslie is the founder of Oxford Healthspan and the co-founder of the Oxford Longevity Project. And if you think that sounds aligned with all the stuff I talk about, you're totally right. I am completely stoked to have a conversation with you today. Leslie, we got connected in kind of a roundabout way through several different people that came into my life. And I'm so excited because your work is the biological complement, essentially, or component of a lot of the stuff that I talk about. You heard me just mention my courses. And so it's not that I'm against aging. It's that I'm against some of the things that come with it that we don't necessarily need. And I think that you've made that your life's work. Is that accurate to say?
Absolutely right. It's most definitely my life's work. My mission is really to show people that we have the power within us to actually slow and in some cases even reverse aging. And I am sort of proof positive that this can be done because I was given a sort of death sentence, given 5 years to live with lupus. And I have outlived that diagnosis. I've been now lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, and Hashimoto's free for about 18 years. And wow, if I can do it, I think others can probably do it too.
Oh, I mean, anybody can. I'm a true believer that if we tune into these things. And so do you have like a whole host of stuff that you do all the time? Or do you have a certain, like maybe like some set things that you constantly tune into and that you have done?
Well, one of the most important things I do is every 6 months, I go to my functional medicine doctor, who is a Western trained endocrinologist. She's French. She's in Harley Street in London, and she does huge number of blood and urine panels. So she's really looking to see where I am compared to my baseline of however many years ago, and then top up any deficiencies. If there are any infections, underlying chronic infections, she would deal with those. She's helping with my antioxidant status, so things like glutathione, for instance. And, now we're looking at things like biological age testing. So DNA methylation as markers of changes, biological aging markers in the body. So these are things that I do. And I also, as an older woman, I'll be 58 in June. I also, of course, hormones are really important. And as a former Hashimoto's patient, sadly, I wasn't able to undo the damage that had been done there. So I don't have much of a thyroid left. I have about an eighth, they say, of a thyroid. So I have to take natural desiccated pig's thyroid. That was the only one that worked for me. And then I do the BHRT as well, the bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. Some precursors like DHEA and pregnenolone. Mm-hmm. And these are all things that my doctor has said, you know, the DHEA and the pregnenolone, for instance. Then might be some vitamins. I'm not anemic, so I've never needed iron, but B vitamins I definitely need because I do have a stressful job, not just as a mom, but also running this startup. So yeah, plenty of B vitamins.
Yeah. And you know what? I do that protocol too. I've been doing it for a couple of years and just paying attention to that wellness aspect and really staying tuned in. And I think, I don't know, I can speak for myself, but I don't know if a lot of women express this to you, but it can be really overwhelming and really confusing. Like, you know, just all the things that we have to keep track of and to kind of figure out for ourselves. It's a tough road to navigate sometimes, and to even jump in can feel a little overwhelming. So I think, would you say that's a good place for people to start, and just start like maybe getting a general feel for their wellness if they're not already doing that?
Yes, definitely. And if nothing else, you get a baseline of your hormones, right? As women, we know our hormones will change dramatically. And I always encourage young women, get your baseline hormone testing done now when you're young, because when you're 40, you don't want to be looking at what your hormones were like when you were 36. You want them to be what they were in your, you know, when you were young, right? Really young. And I also, with my coaching clients before, I always would say, think back to a time when you felt invincible, when you felt like the world was your oyster. That's what we want to get everyone back to. And then with my work with the Oxford Longevity Project, I'm always saying, doesn't matter if you're over 50, over 60, over 70, you can still get that feeling back. The body always wants to go back to homeostasis or balance, where we do have that feeling that everything is firing on all cylinders, brain, heart, spirit, but we have to help it. We've got to give it the resources it needs in order to function optimally. And getting that testing done is really important. Of course, there are also wearable trackers like, you know, an Oura Ring or a Whoop BioStrap. All these things are the next layer, I would say, after getting that baseline blood and urine testing done.
That's excellent advice too. I wish that I had those markers and a baseline from long ago. So, you know, I just started when I could, which was late 40s for me. And you know what? I have a couple questions in there. One question is, so many women struggle with thyroid issues these days. I feel like I know so many. Do you have a theory around that? Did women always and we didn't know it? Or is this like a modern thing?
There's a lot of Hashimoto's thyroiditis out there, and it's an autoimmune disease. And I think it has to do with gut dysbiosis, with leaky gut. And how leaky gut comes about is inflammation in the lining of the gut. And what do most of us eat too much of? Well, we eat a lot of sugar. What is sugar? It's an inflammatory. We eat a lot of processed food, much more processed food than our grandparents did, where they were eating whole foods. There are some things in processed foods we simply do not know what they are. And if they're under a certain threshold, the manufacturer is under no obligation to write what that is, but it could be an allergen to us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes it's like in supplements, it's the same. I mean, women are much more onto clean beauty, clean house cleaning products. You know, we don't want petathletes or parabens or any of this other stuff. But it is literally everywhere. And when we ingest something that is an inflammatory, and that could be anything from a lectin, and the most famous lectin of all is gluten, could be dairy, but it could just be too much sugar. The gut lining, which is only one cell thick, begins to open up when it's inflamed. And then what happens is undigested proteins, particles of food that we have not yet digested, go into the bloodstream, where the immune system springs into action and literally tags them like you would with a Post-it note and says, right, any other immune cell that comes by, if you see a protein like this, destroy it. Well, the problem is that some of those proteins resemble the proteins on our thyroid.
Wow.
And that autoimmune attack, once it starts, you have to do two things. You've got to remove the trigger. So remove whatever that protein is. So you give the gut lining a chance to heal, and it will regenerate. It regenerates naturally every 72 hours, but it has got to continually slough off cells and grow new ones continually. And then we have to bring the immune system back into balance. So when I was diagnosed with my illnesses, and unfortunately lupus, I was told was incurable, I thought, bad answer, don't like someone telling me that my diagnosis is incurable, do not accept, right? I then I did tons of research, and I realized that actually inflammation, which has now been deemed a hallmark of aging, a new hallmark of aging in itself, inflammation was the root cause of my autoimmune conditions. And so I thought, well, I'll just remove all the triggers, and then I'm going to, and I went on an anti-inflammatory diet, Dr. Barry Sears's diet. And then I said, the immune system is still on a hair trigger. It sees something, it reacts too quickly. It sees a tiny matchstick being lit, and it thinks it's a fire, it's DEFCON 1. How do I get the immune system back into balance? And I used something that was very novel at the time called intravenous immunoglobulin. And it was two infusions, basically 4 hours each. It was quite expensive. At the time, it was $12,000 for each one. Now I've heard the price is $30,000 to $90,000 US. But wow. I think the two together were what allowed me to go back to my doctor, retest, and suddenly my cytokines, my tumor necrosis factor alpha, my C-reactive protein, everything had dropped. It had all plummeted back down to normal. And my doctor said, congratulations, you no longer have lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. And I thought, wait, is that it? I just walk out of here? There are no trumpets to say that is a miracle, right? I felt like I deserved an Olympic gold medal and that everybody should know about this. But nobody, she wasn't interested in what I had done. Nobody else was really talking about it. I was sort of like, well, it's a bit shameful to have, had these diseases. Probably no one wants to talk about it. Only older people talk about their diseases. I'm not going to talk about it. But as I've gotten now older myself, it makes me angry because I have now met other women who have had these illnesses. And in particular with rheumatoid arthritis, you start with drugs that are immune suppressing. And I was trying to get pregnant at the time I had my diagnosis, which is probably why the doctor said, I was doing IVF. I think this is why she said, forget IVF. You have like 5 years left. But if you are on immune suppressants, you want to avoid little children, right? Because they carry germs. You want to avoid really public situations where you might get an infection. So RA patients are on these immune suppressants and they don't address the root cause. What they do is they stop the attack, which is a good thing. It's a laudable thing. You don't want to destroy more tissue. But wouldn't it be better if the immune system could be brought back into balance? And I'm not saying I'm not a doctor. I'm just a patient for whom this happened to work, but I am living proof because, I've now been in remission for 18 years. I'm living proof that this is a possibility for at least some others like me. And instead of being on those immune suppressants, which after a period of time, they stop, and then you go to a chemo drug, methotrexate. And if you are a woman who wants to have babies and you've had this chemo drug, guess what? It's not great for your eggs. Wow. So how much better if you could just rebalance the immune system, which the body always wants to return to balance. That is its point of least friction. That is where it desires to be. If we can do that, then the eggs never get exposed to something that is potentially toxic. They stay viable. That woman can get rid of her symptoms and can still have children if she wants, right? And does not have to worry about avoiding these social situations where, she might be exposed to something, especially women who are longing for children, who love to be around little children, to then say, oh no, you're not allowed to be because you might get an infection or something. What kind of a life is that?
Or if they already have kids, well, then you're really screwed.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got a
exactly.
toddler running around, right? This is super fascinating. I've wondered myself. I was diagnosed around age 40, or I tried to avoid it for years with hypothyroid, and so I've stayed on Synthroid, just a really low dose. My levels have been good all these years. I'm 50 now, so but I've toyed with the idea, like, how do I get off this? Why am I on this for the rest of my life? What other recourse have I got? So that's been interesting to explore, and just to hear all these things, and that thyroid issue makes a lot of sense. So thanks for sharing that.
No problem at all. I have often wondered too, how do I get off of Armour thyroid or Urfa thyroid? These are the ones that I take.
I've taken Armour too. Yeah.
So levothyroxine I cannot do because it is just the synthetic hormone T4. And that is what is considered best practice around the world. If you have hypothyroidism, you will be prescribed that. The problem is that some people are genetically incapable of turning T4 into the bioactive or bioavailable thyroid hormone T3. And Synthroid, Armour, Urfa will have the desiccated thyroid. Actually, I'm just thinking, is Synthroid desiccated? Or is
I think just Armour.
It's just Armour. So just the Armour and the Urfa. These desiccated pig's thyroid will actually have T3, but they will also have other compounds, T0, T1, T2. Apparently T2 is involved in body weight. So there are a lot of things you don't know. We don't know what we don't know, right? And for whatever reason, this works great for me, especially because I can't do that conversion of T4 to T3, because now all my cells and every cell in the body has a receptor for T3. Now my cells get the T3 that they need. And thyroid is very important for the heart. It governs the heart, helps with circulation. This is why hypothyroid patients have cold hands, cold feet, because the circulation is impaired, basically. So
I mean, how are you not a doctor? I don't understand. You need to run over there to the Oxford office and be like, will you just confer a title on me? I'm like a PhD. Or no, you're like an MD. I mean, wow. Like, did you do this before? Did you know this stuff? Or did you just get into this world when you got your diagnosis and you were like, holy crap, now I'm doing this?
I got into this world because I was highly motivated to live. And I did not want to live a short life with pain, right? Which is what I had. That was my tip off, was I could not use my hands to turn doorknobs, to turn faucets, or use scissors without feeling excruciating pain. And that's when the RA diagnosis, the rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis, was not at all a surprise to me. The lupus, which I had never heard of, that was a surprise. And then even more of a surprise was the doctor saying, oh, and by the way, that's not curable. So here are the drugs for the RA. We've got nothing for the lupus. And me just thinking, okay, the buck stops with me, right? I have to figure this out. It's a bit like Dr. Terry Walls. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she's an MS patient. And
know the name, partner,
So she was an instructor at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Iowa City, Iowa, and got MS, did the treatment for MS that she, as a doctor, would be prescribing to another MS patient. She had slowly progressing MS. And then her partner said, when she got into a wheelchair with a tilt head function, because she could no longer hold her head up, and she, basically one of those sort of joysticks to kind of move around, because she had very little ability to move her arm. Her partner said, right, the kids and I basically will go down with you unless you figure this out. You are the doctor. You figure this out. You are the one with the mind to figure this out. And so she was like, right, okay, true. They depend on me for my salary. I had better figure this out. So she went through every study she could find, and she identified many food substances in food, whether it was turmeric or other substance like lycopene, things that were anti-inflammatory or antioxidant, had these other properties, and she began to incorporate them into her life. She also used things like low-dose naltrexone to help as well, but she reversed her illness. Within 6 months, she was riding a bicycle. That's incredible. If you've been in a wheelchair for 2 years.
That's crazy. That's wild.
Yeah. But when patients like us are highly motivated, and I have had doctors, I do remember saying to the doctor, is there anything I can do? What about my diet? I think we patients are always like, what about my diet? And now more doctors are saying, well, maybe you could do something. But at the time, it was like, oh no, there's nothing you can do. Nothing moves a needle. Well, if you get only 3 hours of nutrition instruction in medical school, of course, you will think there's nothing you can do, right? Thank goodness we have doctors who have gone on to educate themselves on the value of nutrition or other alternative therapies. And those are the ones that, I always say they're the pioneers and the superheroes, because they're bucking the trend of their medical associations by looking at these things, which are simply not part of the current medical curricula.
Whether you're sober curious or on your sobriety journey like I am, there can be challenges along the way. That's why I want to tell you about Everbloom. Everbloom is a new way to get support in alcohol recovery. Everbloom knows that particularly the first 90 days of sobriety can be extra challenging. So they offer everything from a free plan to one-on-one coaching along the way, along with meetings, uplifting emails, which I've been getting and loving, and curated resources. Everbloom provides small online meetings with people matched to you, where you will find conversation and connection, and you can also set and achieve weekly goals with your Everbloom group coach, who's dedicated to guiding you through your sobriety journey. Everbloom creates a safe space for peer support, and we all know that makes such a difference. It's even been found to be clinically effective at improving long-term sobriety outcomes. Community matters. So even if you're just sober curious, you can get connected to others and find support along the way. So whatever phase of your sobriety journey you're in, whether you're struggling, you want to get sober, or you're looking for more connection, sign up today for a free meeting. No pressure, no commitment, just check it out and get the support you need. Everbloom, a new way to get support in alcohol recovery. Sign up today at joineverbloom, that's BLUME.com, or follow the link in the show notes. I'll see you there. What weight do you put in that deciding, that mental attitude? Because so many times we can be like, oh, I'll surrender to what life is showing me. Like I talk about a lot of stuff like that, right? And so life shows you this, you get this diagnosis, but then you just say, no, I'm going to live. Like I'm going to figure this out. I mean, that seems like it's that placebo effect, right? That whole idea of, no, I'm going to make this work, like you did and like Terry did.
You're absolutely right. And I believe that is the first step, right? Okay, I don't accept this. I will be my own patient advocate. I will leave no stone unturned. What I will caveat that with is that I was the caregiver for my grandmother who had glioblastoma. So she had a brain tumor. So I was at UC Berkeley at university, and she got this diagnosis, and she was a really, tough, spirited woman from the Midwest. And I moved back to Indianapolis where she lived. I took a year out of university to take care of her. And I watched the chemo destroy her. I watched it just, it was a battle that, she went in with the best spirit, but she was destroyed by it. And at the end, I remember talking to her doctors who were like, you could just stop. We were feeding her through a tube. He just said, you could just stop feeding her. And that is not a fair fight. This is what I'm against. Where we are given treatments, you go in with the best of intentions and the spirit and the will to make it work. But if you were fighting something like that, I mean, in her case, fighting the chemo, my God, if it doesn't get the cancer, it will get you. I have nothing against chemo. It can work. But there are some cases where I think, having watched a close relative really lead a poor quality of life for their last year, it's something that we have got to just bear in mind when we make these decisions. And it was simply not a fair fight. She never, it was horrible.
And, being faced with that decision too, you've got these doctors that are saying, this is what you have to do, and so she probably felt like, what choice do I have, like, rather than, I'm sure then, holistic wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And not to say that would have worked, but it's just, my mom passed away from ulcerative colitis, which turned into a tumor. And when they found the tumor, she was just tired and she opted not to have chemo. So, I saw kind of the other side of that, and she died 21 days later, which was super fast. It was, but there's that mental thing again. She was just like, all right, I'm done. Like, she really literally was like, I'm done. And it was astonishing to see. But, anyway, I'm sorry about your grandmother. And that's just an excellent point. And we're faced with people saying these things to us, just like you had, like, this is a death sentence. This is it,
Yeah.
And it's no.
What is good is that now, rather than managing diseases, we now know that most of the chronic diseases are diseases of aging. And so there is this tantalizing idea that if we simply slow aging or even reverse aging, we can swerve those diseases of aging, or, as happened in my case, reverse them. And there is a whole body of work around these hallmarks of aging, the pathways down which we age. And there are now, depending on whom you talk to, there are 12 to 14 of these hallmarks of aging, which include everything from stem cell dysfunction, mitochondrial dysfunction, shortened telomeres, impaired protein folding, inflammation, gut dysbiosis, lack of autophagy. Some of your community will be familiar with these things. And so we now have identified levers that we can push on to slow that aging process. I mean, I would argue that at age 39, I was aging much faster than I should have, hence why I got these illnesses, these chronic illnesses. And in the process of stopping them and reversing them, I had aged myself backwards. But I think we can all do that. And so inflammation is a great one. So many things can trigger inflammation. It's not just, say, sugar or food in the diet. It can also be things like stress. And there's work out of China on stress and inflammation, right? How it actually, when you have too much stress, mental stress, you actually impair the immune system. And the immune system is there when it is in perfect balance. It is there to identify cancer correctly and to stop its growth, to correctly identify self from non-self, so to stop an autoimmune attack, and to also correctly identify and dispose of pathogens, viruses, bacteria, mold, fungi that should not be there. But if we think about the fact that stress impairs the immune system, well, right there, we can see where illness and chronic disease has an opportunity to get involved. Because if the immune system does not correctly identify those three things, cancer, self, non-self, pathogens, then all sorts of calamities can happen internally.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I've read a lot about that too, and it's so interesting that we, have these things that we can do, like reducing stress, and it actually has these implications on our body. You mentioned autophagy. Am I saying it right?
You can say autophagy, you can say autophagy. I tend to say
Autophagy.
autophagy.
That's what you said. Autophagy. Yes. So autophagy, can you expand on that, please? Because I know
Sure.
that was mentioned several times in the questions that I asked you before we started, and I'm very curious.
Sure. So autophagy comes from the Greek auto or self and phagy eating. It's not self-cannibalization, but it's more
Okay.
the body's ability to identify cells that are no longer functioning as they should, so dysfunctional cells, and
Hmm.
to basically sequester them or put them into garbage bags and burn them up for energy. And you can also, in the body's innate wisdom, it will actually take components of the cell that are functioning properly, and maybe some mitochondria are functioning properly, but the protein folding bits are not. It will take the parts that are functioning properly and reuse them to create new cells. So
Ah,
it's the body hates waste. The body is so good at actually making sure that anything that is still good is reused and anything bad is then burned for energy. And that's why when we fast, we trigger autophagy, because the body says, whoa, I'm not getting any food and I need some energy. How can I burn something to create energy? Oh, right. Let's burn some dead cells or some non-functioning cells, basically. And that's why fasting can be so good for people. In particular, I'd say for men. Women, it's a different story, especially for those of us who are hypothyroid. When we fast for too long, our bodies, which are made for reproduction, say, I can't bring a baby into this world. I think I'd better conserve resources. We're just not going to do that menstrual bleeding thing every month. Let's just stop with that, because clearly there are no resources coming in. So women lose their periods. They can even lose their hair. And women who are hypothyroid, like you and me, will find that our body says, oh, definite famine, hold on to body fat, and let's release reverse T3. Reverse T3 can bind to those T3 receptors in the cell and block any bioavailable T3 from getting to the cell. So we feel sluggish, like we're hibernating. We just want to sleep all day. We get brain fog. The metabolism goes down. The cold hands and feet come back again. And so that is the flip side to fasting. So it is different for women than it is for men. If we carry a huge amount of body fat and we need to burn that off, that's okay. Fasting, great for people who are carrying too much. But for women who are of normal body weight, who are hypothyroid, can be a problem. So window fasting is much better there. Or you can use geroprotectors or autophagy activators like I do, which could be things like nobilitin or Spermidine.
yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about that, because that is what you sent me a sample of. So I've been taking it. It's a little
Oh,
hard
great.
for me to gauge, until I do my blood work, I think it's a little hard for me to gauge what difference it's making, because I do so many other things, like the DHEA. I take other supplements, and not only that, I've been trying lately to exercise more and clean up my diet. Imagine that. So, so it's a little tough, but let's delve into that. So, that's your product. Primeadine is the brand name, correct? Brand name?
Primeadine, that's absolutely right. Yeah.
Primeadine. And so let's talk about where that came from and what that does.
So Primeadine has polyamines in it. Polyamines are basically things that have multiple amino acids in them. So spermidine is one of the polyamines. Spermine and putrescine are two others, and they occur in a virtuous recycling loop in the body. And it's absolutely vital. It's so vital to life for humans and for all plants that spermidine is in high quantities in of course, sperm. And it is in very high quantities in human breast milk and in very high quantities in the endosperm of seeds. So a wheat germ would be one area, for example, rice bran would be another. And that is for the next generation, for the plant's baby to survive. And it's needed for growth. So when we're babies, we have the highest concentration of spermidine that we will ever have in our life, because we are undergoing very, very rapid cell renewal. And that's what it does. Spermidine will trigger cell renewal and recycling. Spermine is very good for DNA methylation. And putrescine is a precursor, just in the same way that DHEA and pregnenolone are precursors to the sex hormones. Putrescine is a precursor to spermine and spermidine, and the body will simply say, do I need more of this? Okay, I've got the putrescine, I'll make more of the spermidine or the spermine. It's very good at allocating those resources again. What it has been shown to do, though, is if we look at, say, the 12 hallmarks of aging, there are 3 that have been added, it inhibits 9 of those 12 hallmarks, which is amazing. Yes.
Nice.
So that is, when we think again about how do we slow or impact that aging process? Well, we can do it with those hallmarks. Let's inhibit them. And if we can do that with 9 of the hallmarks, which are, like I said, impaired protein folding, intercellular communication, telomere shortening, mitochondrial dysfunction, stem cell dysfunction, gut dysbiosis, impaired autophagy, and I'm trying to think what is inflammation, because spermidine is an anti-inflammatory. If we can do those 9, then the body, it's like having a house cleaner. Oh, somebody's come in to do the housework. Now I have time to actually get a good meal on the table, right?
Ooh, I like that. I like that analogy. Yeah, yeah.
So suddenly it's like, oh, the body says, I have time to do these other things because I'm taking care, these other 9 things have been taken care of. It's all about resources, right?
I was about to say, it can devote resources to what it needs to do rather than just cleaning up that other stuff.
Exactly.
Ooh.
So when we're young, we make it in our tissues, we make it in our gut biome, and we get it in food. But as we get older, our tissues production of spermidine declines. As the gut biome is exposed to, no surprise, not enough fiber, infections, other bacteria that get in there that outcompete the friendly gut bugs that manufacture spermidine. As we are exposed to broad spectrum antibiotics, that flora in the gut is compromised and is no longer able to produce the quantities of spermidine that it was able to in youth. So we are much more reliant on getting it from primarily plant sources of spermidine, spermine, and putrescine. Sorry, those names are they're terrible. But because I say them all day long, I have no compunction, just,
they're not the greatest names. They need to hire a rebrander. Yeah.
Yeah, it was an old Dutch guy who came up with it because he looked in the 17th century. He developed, Antony van Leeuwenhoek developed the microscope, and he was like, oh yeah, what can I put under this great glass? I can magnify everything. Boys and their toys, right? And just hair, nails, skin, what else? Urine, semen. Yeah, let's do that. So that's where these unfortunate names come from. But
I'm glad you said that. I was curious. So thank you.
Yeah, he actually developed it because he was a linen merchant. He's known as the father of like modern microbiology, but in fact, the guy was a linen merchant, and
Wild.
he was really unhappy about buying bolts of fabric and then coming back a few months later and noticing the moth holes in his linen. So he was like, I need to identify, before I buy this, I need to identify where the moth larvae, what they look like. So that was his motivation. He didn't want to see, he was just interested in saving his inventory, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So talk about unintended consequences. Thanks to him, we here we are. We do have a big contribution to modern science, and we have these polyamines with terrible names. But those polyamines are incredibly important as anti-inflammatories, healing up the gut lining. They're very good when the gut lining is exposed to those polyamines, it will actually heal and close up those tight junctions so the proteins don't get into the bloodstream. It will make the villi, the little shag carpet fingers that the gut is covered in to absorb nutrients, it will make them taller. And that gives more surface area to the villi so they can absorb more nutrients. So we as humans have better ability to absorb our food. And there are so many other benefits, but while we're talking about the gut biome and the gastrointestinal lining, that lining renews every 72 hours. It's constantly renewing, but you will know if it works for you when you take a supplement like this, because you will see your hair and nails growing faster.
Cool.
And they are a proxy for what is essentially happening to your gut lining and everything else inside.
Your hair looks great.
Well, I don't know.
You have gorgeous hair.
Well, so do you. I mean, we're doing a lot of things.
But thank you.
They look amazing.
Not all mine, but thank you.
Well, yeah. So this is all mine. One of the things that Spermidine will impact is the hair follicle. And that is a great benefit because it helps with epithelial stem cells in the hair bulb. And it will move the hair follicle from the from the catagen or telogen phase. That's either the resting or the shedding phase. It will push it back into the growth phase, which is called the anagen. And it is only in the anagen phase, the growth phase, that melanogenesis or pigment production happens. So basically, Spermidine puts the follicle back into the growth phase, so it grows faster, but that's also the only time when pigment is made. So we have had people who have said, my hair has repigmented, and there's a photo of someone where you can see gray at the end and dark at the root. That's on
so
Primeadine.
Wild.
And she's not the only one. So I'll be 58, but I don't dye my hair, and I don't need to. So that's a remarkable ability of the body, right? My mother keeps looking at my hair, right?
I mean, that's insane. Like, I didn't know at all that I read something when I was studying you about that, and I forgot until you mentioned it. But wow. Okay. Well, there's a good marker right there. I've got some.
Yeah. So that's a place to look, right? And then of course, the hair growth is systemic. So fortunately, you will see your brow line getting thicker. So when I was in my 20s, everybody was like, "Oh, pluck, 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 pluck," and
the 90s. I blame Drew Barrymore. Yeah.
yeah. So the brow line will fill in, and lashes will get longer. And these are things I would say I noticed it. I was taking another product before when I was doing research as to which one to bring to market. And when I tried ours, I wasn't expecting such a profound difference. But I noticed at the 6-week mark, my eyelashes just went boing. And we have had other people say, now, obviously results are going to vary, but hair follicles are the place to, I think, look, and nails growing faster. If you have epilated a lot of hair, it is possible it will come back. So that's the downside. Right.
Okay. Noted.
So,
Noted.
noted. Right. So sorry about that.
Is this for, you know what? If that's the price I pay, that's okay. Are you ready to up-level your pleasure practice? I have in mind, and the main things that have helped me are the tools that I've found from Wands. Wands creates luxurious products that encourage us all to honor our body, celebrate our sexuality, and live in pleasure, with more pleasure all the time. One of my favorites, if you listen to this show, then you probably already know, is the Cervix Wand. Wands has trademarked their #1 best-selling glass pleasure wand. It's for vaginal and anal de-armoring, and it's designed for cervical and G-spot stimulation. And let me tell you, it's incredible. It's helped thousands of women become more connected to their bodies and their pleasure, and supports them to heal pelvic pain through self-yoni massage, and helps awaken more pleasure. Just recently, I've ordered the Venus wand, another trademarked wand from Wands, and it's designed to activate and awaken the G-spot and more. Also, don't miss one of their new offerings, which are free bleed blankets that can be used as waterproof intimacy blankets. They have a beautiful selection now available. But take a look around at wands.com, that's WAANDS, because they have a huge selection of incredible items like yoni eggs, crystal pleasure wands in amethyst, black obsidian, anything that your heart desires, and so much more. Check them out at wands.com, that's WAANDS.com, and use my link in the show notes to get 10% off, or simply enter my code Amy Edwards at checkout. Again, that's WAANDS, wands.com. Y'all, I have started using higher dose products, and I am such a fan. You know, I don't put anything on this podcast that I am not 100% completely behind. And I have a special discount code for you for all higher dose products. I'm so excited. If you don't know, Higher Dose is a wellness company. They have wellness tech products, they have tools, they have supplements, and they have body care. They have so many things that are hot right now too, that are really biohacking and up-leveling our lives at home, which is really cool. They have an infrared sauna blanket. They have an infrared PEMF mat that I'm so excited to be sharing about soon. One of my favorites though is the red light face mask. It stimulates collagen, it activates glowing skin, reduces fine lines, regenerates cells, and it's soft. It's not like one of the hard plastic ones, so you can kind of move it around on your body, which I've been doing, and I am seeing amazing results. I am absolutely addicted to it. I use it every single night, and I'm using it in conjunction with one of their other products, the Glow Serum. And I'm very picky about what I put on my skin, and I am loving the Glow Serum. It's specially formulated to plump and hydrate and stimulate radiant skin, which that's the goal. They have a ton of other products too, magnesium ingestibles, magnesium body care, which has a healing oil and a serotonin soap that you can use in your bath, which I've been using too. It boosts your mood, enhances your skin, and deepens your detox, gets you calmed down. Anyway, I'm a fan, so I'm so excited to offer you 15% off using my code MAGIC15. Go to the show notes. You can click through on the link right there, or if you go to Higher Dose, just enter the code MAGIC15 and you'll get 15% off. Higher Dose has been featured in Goop, Glamour, Elle, Vogue, Bazaar, Allure, basically you name it. And there's a reason why. So go check it out. It's at higherdose.com and enter my code MAGIC15 for 15% off. Is this for men and women? And when do you take this? When's the optimal time?
Well, the instructions on the bottle say to, when you're first starting out, to just see how your body responds, because there is a prebiotic in both of our products, Primeadine, the wheat germ derived one, and the Primeadine with a special strain of algae with chlorella in it. And just so that people can get used to it, we say start with one capsule or one tablet and have it with a meal to make sure you're good with it. And the wheat germ derived one has a very tiny amount of gluten. It's 40 milligrams, which is around the amount in 1/100th of a slice of American bread, but that means that one is not appropriate for celiacs. However, if you're gluten sensitive, you might be able to do it. And I'm gluten sensitive. but I have no problem with it. And same with Amy Lamott, our nutritionist and, one of our medical advisors.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, you have a nice little quiz on your website if people want to go take that and see, where they fall on it. So that's super interesting. I haven't had any problem, but I don't really have problems with gluten. So I haven't noticed any issue at all.
And that's
And I've
good.
been trying to follow the directions. So
Well, so
yeah,
what I would do now that you're past that sort of bedding in period, because I think you're on
yeah,
Primeadine Original, um,
yeah, I
which
think
is
so.
what a few actresses like Kelly Rutherford, from Gossip Girl, she's on it
Hmm.
as well. When you are on that, and it's, you don't have any problem with the 3 capsules, you can try right before bed on an empty stomach. Just take a little bit before bed. If you don't want to have too much liquid, you can open the capsules out into a tiny bit of yogurt and just then go to sleep. And what most people notice is that on their wearable tracking devices, they see a jump in deep sleep.
Ooh,
And
nice.
yeah, and it also seems to shift the deep sleep window. So if you have to stay up late, most people say that if you want to get your deep sleep window, which is the only time when the brain can kind of take out the trash, that's when the glymphatic system is activated, it's between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. And if you don't go to sleep in that window, you miss your deep sleep that night and you can never get it back. But we have people who have taken it and have shown us their wearable tracking data. And even if they go to bed at 2 or 3 a.m., as long as they take the Primeadine right before bed, they still catch their deep sleep.
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
huge.
So it can
Deep
help
sleep
with
does
jet lag.
doesn't get enough airtime in my view. I'm a sleep freak. I'm a sleep nerd. Just believe that it's a key to life in a lot of ways.
It
So
is.
that's incredible. I really want to try that. I'm going to try it.
It is. And when we sleep, we're not eating. So there is some autophagy that happens then. So if you take an autophagy activator right before you go to bed, you're kickstarting that process. So you're
Hmm.
speeding it up. And then I like to take it in the morning, first thing as well. Again, on an empty stomach, just to keep that autophagy, to lengthen that benefit that I've had by fasting overnight, essentially, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So are these some of the things that you're working on with the Oxford Healthspan and the Longevity Project? Like what are y'all working on specifically?
Well, with Oxford Healthspan, autophagy is a really core idea we want to pursue and bring to people with new products. So we brought to market another molecule called nobilitin, which comes from the peel of an Okinawan lime. So we all know that the Okinawans, they're one of the longevity blue zones. And it turns out that one of the things that they incorporate into their life on a regular basis is shikawasa, which is the Japanese name for this Okinawan lime. And it has high quantities of 2 molecules, actually. One is called nobilitin, and that's an autophagy activator and an anti-inflammatory. And the other one is synephrine. Promising research there. I don't want to go into it too much because I don't want people to get misled, but it appears to help with in animals with tumorigenesis. And so shikawasa is really quite an interesting food compound. And just like, you think about green tea with epigalic catechin, and these polyphenols and these health benefits, there are actually loads of these food compounds that have a lot of amazing molecules in them, but we just don't get enough of them into our diet on a regular basis. We need to be microdosing these things, right? In the way that people are like, oh, I want to microdose psilocybin, I want to microdose, LSD or things like that. Well, in fact, let's microdose the safe food substances first. If you're going to microdose that, please do it with a medical professional who can do this properly.
Hmm.
But there's no problem with microdosing food that happens to have very bioactive compounds. After all, plants are the best chemists out there, right? They have been at this for 1 billion years. They've been on the planet much longer than we have, but they can't run away. So their way of protecting themselves and the next generation is by synthesizing chemicals in reaction to stimuli, whether that is UV sunlight. For example, astaxanthin is created from algae in response to UV light. If we ingest that, that's actually protective of our own skin as well. So these interesting compounds are the ones we're looking for at the moment to bring to market. And we work together with the Japan Autophagy Consortium, whose senior advisor is Yoshinori Osumi. He is the 2016 Nobel Prize winner in medicine or physiology for his research on the mechanism of action of autophagy. And his colleague, Tomatsu Yoshinori, is the fellow who did all of the research in mammals and autophagy. So Osumi Sensei is a yeast guy. Yoshinori Sensei is a mammal guy. So looking in rodents and rabbits and humans. And he was the one he's been working with Osumi Sensei for a long time. And so he's the president of that group. And we're the only non-Japanese company that is a member of that. So we have been for the last 2 years. And it does allow us to kind of get the fast train to the interesting research on autophagy and autophagy activators. I mean, the Japanese are so far ahead of the Americans or the Brits on this. They even had an autophagy day, National Autophagy Day, where government bodies, commerce, and academics got together to talk about autophagy because it's an important policy initiative for them. They, as a population, are becoming too top heavy with people over the age of 65. They don't have enough young people to take care of these people. So they have to keep them healthy, right? And they're doing a great job. You know, they spend around $4,000 US a year per person on healthcare. The Americans spend over 12,000. I think maybe even it's over 13,000 now. But the health outcomes in Japan are very, very good for both men and women, in spite of the fact that the men who are in that older age bracket right now have smoked for much of their lives. These are the salarymen who, smoked all day and then drank all night, but then would wake up and would have a little bowl of rice, probably resistant starch. It was probably cooled boiled rice, would have some natto, fermented soybeans, which are full of spermidine, and putrescine. They'd have that. They'd have their green tea for their epigallocatechins. And then throughout the day, they're eating more plant fibers, right? Because it's just a much bigger part of the diet. Those plant fibers actually feed the mitochondria in the gut, right? All those gut bugs. And because of the fact, I think my hypothesis is the fact that they were able to unwittingly microdose on all of these wonderful compounds, but also feed their mitochondria, has meant that their mitochondria have looked after them in spite of the fact that they have kind of abused themselves, right?
Yeah.
The men have anyway.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible, And I mean, you hear so much about that diet and stuff, and yet we still don't adopt it regularly, which I don't know. I guess I'm kind of like wondering that about myself. Like, why am I not eating more like that? That's an incredible thing. And I think that a lot of your work does bridge that Eastern philosophy and Eastern views, right? With our own Western.
Yes, absolutely. So, and those practices, the diet, the feeding of the mitochondria, this is very important, but there are other things, lifespan, healthspan, it's holistic. And we have to think about things like gratitude. We have to think about movement. Sleep is foundational, right?
Yeah. And gratitude, I remember in one of Joe Dispenza's books, he talks about, I don't know how you felt about that, but he talks about gratitude actually boosts immunoglobulin A. I think I'm saying that right. And so that's
love Joe Dispenza. Love Joe Dispenza. He's very much, my story dovetails nicely with a lot of what he says, right?
I wondered how you felt about that, So
yeah,
that's good. That's good to hear. I'm a big fan.
Yeah. And for me as a patient, I want what works. And, I have done the hard work to, to beat the diagnoses. And with infertility, I also had a biological baby at age 43, no IVF required, although I had done all of that. And the body is a miracle, right? We live with a miracle every day. We should be in awe, like when we go to the Grand Canyon and we look and we say, wow, that is amazing. We should be doing that with our body, but we take it for granted. And yet it always wants to I think it always wants to do right by us. It always wants to go back into balance, into homeostasis. It is the easiest place for it to go. It is the point of least friction is to go back into balance, but we have got to give it the tools, the resources to do that. And the body has this innate wisdom to heal itself, but we've got to give it the resources and the conditions. And that definitely means, getting rid of stress, getting rid of toxic people, but also getting rid of toxic food, getting rid of toxic cleaning products, getting rid of toxic beauty products, right? Because those are like micro cuts to us, micro injuries that the body has got to constantly field and get rid of and repair. So the fewer of these injuries, these insults that we have on the body, the easier it is for the body to do what it knows how to do and stay healthy.
Absolutely. Are you happy about, like, I feel like there's a shift more toward this, that we're moving in that direction at least. And I'm sure that makes you feel pretty good, pretty, validated in your work and stuff like that, right?
Very much so. Actually, it was not always like this in academia, and it has come that way, which is terrific. And I remember when I was told that my autoimmune conditions were due to leaky gut, and this was like in 2006, it was explained to me. And I went to my GP and said, well, I have leaky gut, because they ask you, what's your history? I said, oh, I have leaky gut. They were like, that doesn't exist. And I was like, really? That doesn't exist? Okay. And, who am I? I'm just a lowly patient. They're the person with the degree. So I didn't push back, but I was at a dinner with two of our scientists, immunology professor Katja Simon and rheumatology researcher, Dr. Gada Al-Saleh, at Christmas. And they were on either side of me, and they were talking about someone who had done something, and Katja said, oh, well, they'll get leaky gut. Oh, leaky gut. Katja said, that's terrible. You can't get leaky gut. I mean, the immune system is going to go wild. And I just said, wait a second, are you two saying that you believe in leaky gut and you know it? And they both said, oh, of course. I mean, it was like, but 10 years ago, people thought it was a joke. Oh yeah, no, 10 years ago, we thought it was a joke too. But no, it's a real thing. So yes, I do feel validated. And I
bet.
I think that the virus that shall not be named, I think that has a lot to do with it, because we could see the limitations, especially for individuals who had pre-existing comorbidities. They were so badly hit, right? Mm-hmm. And what could we do? There just wasn't a lot that we could do. So I think this shift, both in academia and in the general population, around personal empowerment, really taking personal responsibility, making the body as healthy as possible, not, constantly assaulting it with processed food, synthetic drugs, chemicals, in our, beauty and house cleaning products, and then getting the basics right, like you said, sleep, getting out into getting some sunlight, right? Mm-hmm. To set our hormones, like cortisol, melatonin. These things are important. I think people are finally getting the point that we individuals have way more power than we thought we did in terms of health.
Beautiful. That seems like a great spot to end on. I want to invite you to just say anything else, though, that maybe you want to reiterate or end on right now, or anything maybe we didn't get to. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to as well? Because
Um,
that was incredible. You are a fount of knowledge. Thank
thank
you.
you.
I loved this episode. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you
Yeah.
very much for having me.
Yeah.
I would just say mind your mitochondria, get more polyamines into your life, whether that's in food, especially as you get older, you probably do need to supplement as well.
What foods is that
And
in?
natto is one, so
Okay.
fermented Japanese soybeans. The
Mm-hmm.
longer you ferment, the more spermidine there is. Uh, Legumes, so peas, beans, there'll be plenty in there. Mushrooms will be a high source as well. And what I would say is that for people who are, I've never had anyone say, oh yeah, I started eating mushrooms every day and my hair turned back this color. Then I would say, try supplementing with a food-derived supplement that has all the polyamines in it, and that also goes through the digestive tract. I would avoid the liposomal, and I would avoid the synthetic mimics. And we haven't tried them in humans. We haven't tested them for safety in humans before. And
Okay.
they don't come with the spermine and the putrescine, which is so
Mm-hmm.
important.
Wow. That's so incredible. Thank you for all the work you're doing on this too. What a wild thing. Do you ever look at your life and go like, I am shocked that I ended up here? I mean,
Yes. Yes, because I'm not a doctor. I didn't love science in school. I mean, I did AP biology, but I was like, no, I'm never doing another science class again when I got to university. But life hits, right? And I did have to learn about cancer with my grandmother. I remember reading Candace Pert's book, Dr. Candace Pert, who wrote this book called Molecules of Emotion, to speak to what you said. Our emotions can have an
wow.
effect on our biology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what Joe Dispenza was saying about, about the immune system. And so I was forced to learn about it. And then with my own diagnoses, yes, I there was no choice because there was no one else who was going to bat for me. The medical establishment had said, there's no point in going to bat for you. We don't have anything to do for you. So it's, at the end of the day, it was up to me to try and figure it out. And God, although I wasn't great at science in school, I somehow managed to do it. So for me, this is like, the A+ of science projects, myself, my own health. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure your old science teacher would be very, very proud of you these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's remarkable. And it's such a testament to how life can lead us. And you thought that could have been the worst thing that happened to you. But it turns out it led you down this path of helping who knows who else and doing groundbreaking research that could lead who knows where for who,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
I'm
I
in this whole space of like not judging things right now. And like we just never know, you know?
Yeah. And who would have thought 20 years ago that anybody would be talking about slowing aging
Right.
as opposed to treating disease? No, it's just slow aging. Then you
Yeah.
don't get those, right? Yeah.
Well, I'm all for it. I mean, they're saying 120 is the new 80 and all that. And I'm like, won't I be tired by then? But I don't know.
You look pretty vital
Yeah.
to me. I think you're gonna be quite the firecracker at 120,
Thank
I'm sure,
you.
Amy.
Thank you. My boyfriend's 15 years younger. And so he's always like, you gotta hang in there. And I'm like, oh gosh, okay. I guess I do. So anyway, thank you. And you as well. You are a leader in this field. And I'm so grateful that you took the time to share today and share your wisdom and knowledge that is extensive. Let's cover how everybody could order Primeadine and, find it and follow your work. Do you want to
So
do
you
that?
can get it at oxfordhealthspan.com. And that's Oxford, like the university, health, and then span, like the span of a bridge. And then if you want to find me and my work on the Oxford Longevity Project, just go to oxfordlongevityproject.org. And
Cool.
we always bring scientists who are at the leading edge on autophagy for a particular body system, cardiovascular system, neurology, multiple sclerosis will be one of our next ones. And then it's all free to the public. And we have them with a clinician who says, this is how you translate this science at the bench, at the lab bench, into a protocol for a patient. So that's quite exciting. And then I have my own more frivolous personal Instagram account, which is Leslie's New Prime, for the new prime of life. So it's just LESLIE, then S, and then New Prime.
I've got them all in the show notes as well. And I just want to say a huge thank you. You are in your prime. Do you feel like it? Do you feel like
I do.
it? Do you feel?
I do. And look at you. You're in your prime too, right?
Honestly, I've never felt better. And like, it's a trip to me because I didn't see that coming, you know? And so cheers to that. Here's to women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, anybody. Like everything's changing. So thank you for being a leader in that. And I'm so happy to connect with you. Thank you so much.
Me too. Thank you as well.
Yes, thank you. And thank you everyone who tuned in today. Please follow Leslie and check out everything. And I'm going to have links in the show notes to everything too. And I'll be sharing too about my own journey with Primeadine and what I'm seeing in that. Maybe my gray hairs are going to go away. Believe me, I'm going to let you know. So thank you. Yeah. So thank you so much for being here, Leslie. And thank you for being here, everyone that's listening. Please rate, review, subscribe, all the things. Subscribe to the newsletter. It's at amyedwards.com or amyedwards.info, has like everything, including the courses. Remember that you can get a discount with Amy15 as your code. I love you so much. Thanks again to our fantastic guest, Leslie Kinney. And thank you to you for being here. Till next time. This has been the Amy Edwards Show from Overcome Studios. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe. And thank you so much for being here. Sign up for our newsletter at amyedwards.com.